Do you ever hear yourself say things like, sorry, quick question, or sorry to bother you, but before you ask for what you need? Maybe you know that you apologize more than you want to, and you wish you could stop saying sorry before you ask questions or make requests. The habit of saying sorry can sound polite on the surface, but most of the time, that pre-apology serves a completely different purpose. It's trying to protect you. Saying sorry before asking a question or making a request is a reflex that shows up when your brain decides that doing so could be socially, emotionally, or relationally risky. Hey there, I'm Amy Shield. I help smart, capable women feel as confident on the inside as they look on the outside. In today's video, I'll help you understand why you have a pattern of saying I'm sorry before asking questions or making requests, the fear that often drives that pattern, plus how to ask directly in a way that builds self-confidence without pre-apologizing. Before I dig into it though, I want to make a quick clarification. The goal of this video is not to get you to stop apologizing altogether. Sometimes an apology is appropriate, respectful, and even necessary. This video is about one very specific habit, apologizing before you ask a routine question or make a reasonable request as though your need for information or help is automatically a problem or an inconvenience to other people. Let's talk about what pre-apologizing can look like in real life. This pattern can show up all across your life, in your personal life, at work, and in just everyday social interactions, often without you noticing or realizing that you're doing it. Maybe at work it sounds like, sorry to bother you, do you have a second? Or, sorry, I just wanted to clarify. Sorry if this is a dumb question, but sorry, can you resend that? Sorry, could you explain what you meant in that meeting? In everyday life, maybe it sounds like, I'm sorry, can you help me find something to an employee at a store? Or, I'm sorry, where are the restrooms? Or, so sorry, could you repeat that? Or, I'm sorry, can I ask you something? Maybe with people you know, it sounds like, sorry to bug you, but could you help me with something? Or, I'm sorry, do you mind if I... Or, sorry, can we talk about something? Now, none of these questions are inherently bad in and of themselves, and yet so many women put sorry right in front of every single one of them. It's a fairly common pattern, and we'll talk more about where it comes from shortly. First, though, I want you to remember this. You're not doing anything wrong by having this habit. If you feel the urge to judge yourself for always saying sorry, give yourself some grace. It's a pattern that your brain learned in your past, and it's also possible to unlearn it over time, and we'll talk about how to do that here shortly. But rather than judging yourself, start to get curious. What is your brain trying to prevent when it pushes you to soften your question or your request with an apology? When sorry is your default entry point into a conversation, it can be a sign that your brain believes that asking is risky. It can also send a subtle message about your own self-perception, and that message is often, my needs are an inconvenience, or I should reduce myself to be more acceptable to other people. That is not a small thing, especially if self-confidence is something that you want to work on. Let's talk about the fear that's driving the pattern. In coaching, some of my clients who want to stop apologizing so much share on the surface that they feel bad for bothering people. Beneath the surface, though, this pattern is often actually stemming from fear. Let's talk about what your brain is trying to prevent here. Saying I'm sorry before asking is often rooted in fear of being rejected or shamed because you quote unquote bothered someone. It can also reflect a fear of taking up space or having needs. Underneath the pre-apology, your brain might be trying to avoid how you would feel if the other person reacted with irritation or impatience, or thought of you as inconvenient, needy, or a problem, or judged you negatively for asking. Ultimately, your brain is trying to avoid the discomfort of not being able to control how you're perceived and the fear that someone else will perceive you negatively. In other words, sorry becomes a protective buffer. It's a way of trying to soften your ask so that the other person will stay comfortable, approving, and be on your side. Of course, we as humans cannot control other people's reactions, and we're also not responsible for other people's reactions. However, However, if your brain and your nervous system learned from your past experiences that your needs and requests are a problem for other people, then your brain and your nervous system will often still try to control the outcome, even though that's not possible. Let's talk about how saying sorry before asking questions and making requests can impact your self-perception. Over time, this habit of pre-apologizing can reinforce a story about who you are, especially in moments when you need something. That story can sound like, I shouldn't need help, or I'm bothering people, or I'm making things harder for the people around me, or I'm asking for something I shouldn't, or I'm not worthy or deserving of help or attention. That story affects how you speak, how you show up, and how much space you allow yourself to occupy in your relationships and in the world. If you've noticed that apologizing is a much broader pattern for you in general, beyond pre-apologizing before asking questions or making requests, I'll link another video where I talk about how to stop over-apologizing. I'll put it here on the screen and also down in the description. Let's talk about when apologizing before asking can be appropriate. Part of building self-confidence is understanding and recognizing nuance. Now, like I said earlier, the goal here is not to swing into rigid rules like never say sorry. Sometimes an apology is appropriate before a question or a request, especially when there is a real interruption or a timing issue or an exception involved. You don't have to stop saying you're sorry completely, and it can help to understand when saying sorry might be a good fit versus when you're doing it out of fear. Here are a few examples where sorry can make sense. And by the way, apologizing is in no way required in any of these scenarios, but like I said, it might be a fit. First, it might be appropriate to say you're sorry when you actually are interrupting. If you walk up to someone who's mid-conversation with another person and you need to jump in with a question or a comment, saying that you're sorry to interrupt is respectful. You're acknowledging a real interruption. If you want to stop saying you're sorry in this kind of a scenario, you could simply say, "May I interrupt?" Next, maybe you're reaching out at an unusual time. If it's late at night or on somebody's day off or during a holiday or an event that you know is going on and somebody's participating in, then contacting them with a question or a request, especially if it's not your normal work or relationship culture, and saying sorry for the late message or sorry to reach out on the weekend can be appropriate. A third scenario where saying you're sorry can be a fit is if you're asking for an exception. Maybe you're requesting something outside of the norm, like a last minute change or an extension or an exception to a policy, or maybe extra time beyond what was agreed upon. A brief apology in this kind of a scenario can be a respectful acknowledgement that you're making an unusual request. Another scenario where sorry might fit is if you're asking someone to redo something because of your mistake. Maybe you missed information that they already provided and now you need them to resend it. And so saying something like, "I'm sorry, I missed that. Could you resend it?" That might be appropriate because you're acknowledging your part in asking them to do it again. Now, here's the difference that I want you to notice. In these scenarios, the apology is attached to a real interruption, a timing issue, an exception, or an impact. In the sorry before asking habit, the apology happens even when what you're asking is normal and reasonable. It's often an attempt to ward off your own discomfort around asking the question or making the request and trying to secure approval from the other person. Here's a practical, in-the-moment process to help you stop saying sorry before asking questions and making requests. You don't need a dramatic overhaul to stop saying sorry before you ask. You really just need to practice a different way of showing up. It will take time and a little bit of effort, but it will be worth it in the end. Start with awareness. It's the first and most important step. Begin by noticing your tendency to say sorry in one of these two moments. Feeling the urge to say sorry before you say it, or maybe hearing yourself say it and then noticing afterwards that you said it. Both of these are useful to be aware of, and neither one of them requires you to shame yourself. If you catch yourself before you say it, you have room to decide how you want to respond in a different way. If you notice after you say it, you can still make an adjustment if you want to without making it awkward. You always have the option to rephrase or not, it's up to you, before you move forward. The next step is to replace the lead-in without over-explaining or finding another way to apologize. So if you're asking a question, instead of saying you're sorry, you can just say, I have a question, or quick question for you, or can I ask you about, or I'm looking for some clarity on something. If you're making a request, you can say, I'd like to ask for your help with something, or could you help me with something? Or I'm reaching out to you because I'd like to request. These replacement phrases are simple on purpose. They communicate your request without apologizing for existing. If you've already said I'm sorry, first, just notice it internally without judging yourself. That might sound like, oh, okay, I pre-apologized there. If you want to rephrase in the moment, and again, you don't have to, you might try saying something like this. Actually, let me rephrase. I have a question. Or let me say that more directly. Could you help me with something? Or here's what I'd like to know. There's no big confession, no over-explaining or self-criticism, just a small pivot to move away from that pre-apology and onto your question. Now, if you don't want to rephrase, just make a quick mental note and move on. This is how self-confidence gets built in real time. You notice the pattern and respond with intention. The next step is to add a quick internal check afterward. So after the interaction, once you have a few moments to yourself, you can reflect on what was coming up for you when you noticed yourself apologizing or wanting to apologize before you asked that question or made the request. Rather than spending a bunch of time on some lengthy mindset exercise, try just a quick check-in that can help you identify what's driving the pattern for you. You might ask yourself a question or two along these lines. What am I afraid will happen if I don't apologize for asking this question? Or what was I assuming about the other person's response that made me think I needed to apologize? Or what am I trying to prevent by saying I'm sorry before asking questions? Or if someone asked me this same question, would I expect them to apologize first? The objective here is not to stop saying I'm sorry immediately. Rather, it's to start uncovering and breaking down the limiting beliefs that are keeping you stuck in this pattern of pre-apologizing before asking questions or making requests. Here are a few examples to give you an idea of what this might look like in everyday life. Example number 1, asking a colleague a normal question. Maybe your pre-apology version sounds like, sorry to bother you, but do you have a second? Now, what might your brain be trying to protect you in this kind of a scenario? Maybe it's fear of how you'll feel if the other person sees you as an inconvenience or an annoyance or rejects your request. Here's a more direct way that you can ask this question. Quick question, do you have a second? Or, I have a question. When you have a moment, can you clarify something for me? That second option is especially helpful if timing is the issue because it respects their time without needing to apologize for needing to ask a question. Example number 2, asking an employee for help in a retail store. This is one of the clearest examples because it highlights how automatic this habit can be. Maybe the pre-apology version sounds like, sorry, can you help me find something? Here, in this scenario, your brain might be trying to prevent fear of how you'll feel if you believe that you're bothering or annoying or inconveniencing the store employee. Maybe even fear of how you think you'll feel if you make someone feel bad if they can't help you find what they're looking for. Now, that might sound like a big convoluted stretch, but as a life coach, I have seen brains do that many, many times. Here's a more direct question that you can ask. Hi, can you help me find something? Or, hi, I'm looking for something. Could you point me in the right direction? You're not being rude here. You're being clear. Employees generally get paid to help customers in stores. You're allowed to ask for assistance without shrinking back first. Example number 3, clarifying something after a meeting. Many women tend to pre-apologize in this kind of a scenario because they're concerned that they'll come off as incompetent and they're afraid of how they'll feel if people around them judge them as incompetent. By the way, these kinds of thought processes often happen very quickly and on a subconscious level, so you may not even consciously realize it's happening. So here's the pre-apology version. Sorry, I'm confused. What did you mean when you said? So what might your brain be trying to protect you from here? Maybe it's trying to protect you from how you'll feel if the other person judges your lack of understanding. Here's a more direct version of this question. Can you clarify what you meant when you said, or I want to make sure I'm tracking. When you said X, did you mean Y? That's a self-confident and professional question. It shows engagement and a desire for clarity, not incompetence. Okay, example number 4, making a request to a friend or family member. Maybe your pre-apology version sounds like this. Sorry to ask, but can you help me with something? What might your brain be trying to protect you in this kind of a scenario? Maybe it's fear of how you'll feel if you think the other person perceives you as an inconvenience or being needy or taking advantage of them. Here's a more direct version of that question that you can swap out instead. Could you help me with something? Or would you be willing to help me with something? Or I'd like to ask for your help with something. Do you have a few minutes? That last line is a great option if you want to be considerate without apologizing. It respects their capacity and their ability to choose without treating your request as a problem. Now, there's a very important nuance to notice in all of these examples. In every one of these examples, your brain isn't trying to protect you from other people's reactions. Instead, it's trying to protect you from your own emotions, the emotions that your brain thinks will come up for you if the other person's reaction isn't what you'd hoped. The risk for your brain is not how other people are going to react. The risk lies in how your brain believes you'll think and feel in response to other people's reactions. Let's talk about how this process builds self-confidence and reduces over-apologizing and over-explaining. If you tend to apologize before you ask, you might also over-explain before you ask. And that often comes from the same place, fear of being judged, rejected, or shamed. Over-explaining is often an attempt to control other people's perceptions. It's saying, please understand me, please don't be upset, please don't think badly of me. Self-confidence is not the absence of discomfort. It's your capacity to trust yourself to navigate whatever comes up, including other people's responses that aren't what you'd hoped. Asking directly is a skills-based way to practice and build self-trust. You're essentially telling yourself, I'm allowed to ask for things. It's okay for me to take up space, and I can handle the response even if it isn't the response I want. If you'd like a deeper framework for building your self-confidence from the inside out, I'll link a video here on the screen and also down in the description that covers my proprietary 3P self-confidence method, where we build self-confidence through your self-perception, your potential to navigate whatever comes up, and shifting your perspective on other people's opinions. If saying sorry before you ask questions or make requests has been part of your kind of default mode of operating for years, know that it is a protective pattern that your brain and your nervous system learned, and it's also one that you can unlearn. In that unlearning process, you do more than just stop saying sorry before asking questions. You actually build self-confidence and self-trust. Remember this simple process that I talked about. Start with awareness by noticing that urge to apologize or noticing after you say it. Next, choose a direct lead-in that fits the moment. Then approach yourself with compassion and curiosity afterward to dig into why you felt like you needed to apologize. This is how self-confidence gets built, one small interaction and one thoughtful reflection at a time. Now, I also want you to know that you don't have to go through this process alone. If you'd like help with unwinding and unlearning this tendency to say sorry before asking questions and making requests, I'd love to invite you to schedule a free 30-minute confidential coaching consultation. This is a 30-minute conversation where we get clear on what's really driving your struggles with confidence. I'll listen closely, ask clarifying questions, and uncover the beneath the surface patterns that are keeping your self-doubt in the driver's seat. You'll leave with great insights and a simple next step to start building confidence, whether we decide to work together or not. And if it's not a good fit, I'll point you in the direction of some other options and resources. You can visit my website at amyshield.com/book to schedule your free consultation, or check out the link in the description. My name is Amy Shield. I help smart, capable women feel as confident on the inside as they look on the outside. Thank you so much for checking out my video today. I hope you have an amazing day. Bye-bye.